see what happens.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, coming at you in threes against twos and twos against threes, it's the Strings and Things podcast. On this show, guitarists come by to change their strings, tell some tales, and play some music. This week, our host Patrick Grant welcomes Daniel Reyes Llinas to the show. Daniel's got a Strat he customized himself, and he's a co-founder of the New York instrumental group Parias Ensemble. We'll hear about the impact that the Beatles, Latin rock, and new wave made on him as a kid growing up in Colombia, and we'll find out what's cooking with Daniel's upcoming album. So let's dig into all of that and hand this over to Patrick right now.
I'd like to welcome my guest and good friend, Daniel Reyes Llinas.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey there. I met Daniel 4 years ago in my first Guitar Circle course in Royalston, Massachusetts. And now here we are 4 years later, and I've gotten to know him and his work as a solo artist and with his ensemble, the Parias Ensemble. And he's been a long-standing member of both Tilted Axes and Tilt Core. So a pleasure to have you on the show, man.
Thank you, Patrick.
What guitar did you bring today?
Well, this is my Fender Stratocaster. It's a custom made. It's a Chicana, I call it. Mm-hmm. It's like a Mexican-American, a female. The neck was given to me by my friend Enrique, say like 10 years ago.
That's rosewood.
It's rosewood, and it's 1984, I found out. And the body was given to me by my former neighbor, and it's a Mexican body. Mm-hmm. I didn't have an electric guitar those days, so I put it together.
That's why it's a Chicana.
That's why it's a Chicana.
Nice Mexican body.
And then I changed the tuning machines, mm-hmm. and then the pickups and the pickguard recently. It's my main guitar.
So that is 3 pickups, right? The third pickup is totally encased.
Yes, it's a Seymour Duncan Blackout.
Okay.
That's what it is, and these ones are Armstrong pickups.
3-position switch, 5-position switch?
5.
5, all right.
It's a wonderful guitar. The action is fantastic. It's going to be heard on your recording.
Our recording,
and as well on my next record, En Remolinos. It means in trouble.
You better believe it. I had used one of my Dan Electros, one of my tilted turquoise Dan Electros on a previous show. And so now I decided to break out my original sparkly guitar, which is another Dan Electro U3 model that I got because it had one of these sort of 1950s Selectomatic single knob for the pickups. I guess every possible combination of pickups can be dialed up by choosing one of the 6 different selectors, because we know 1 times 2 times 3 equals 6. So there's 6 different positions you can put on here. And of course it has just an overall tone and an overall volume. But it is quite sparkly, and one of the reasons why I do like it is that it has sort of that kind of 1950s retro, futurist, kind of George Jetson, kind of look. Yeah, there you go. For it to maintain proper guitar health, I decided it was today's most likely candidate to have its strings changed.
Nice.
I have a pack of 10s for each of us. Shall we dive in?
Please do.
Okay, here we go. So, here we are, changing our strings. Ouch.
Boomers.
Oh, that's going to leave a mark. So, Daniel, tell me, I detect an accent. Are you from Boston?
I'm from Bogota, Colombia.
Close. From Bogota, Colombia.
Bogota, Colombia, not Bogota, New Jersey. I've been in New York for about 15 years.
And they haven't found you?
And I haven't found myself yet.
But your whole family came over, right?
My whole family moved to Florida the year I moved to New York, and they moved to New York about 10 years ago.
Oh, because they couldn't stand those winters in Florida, right?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. They just wanted to have some more of an exciting life, I would say.
Yeah.
And Miami wasn't probably offering that. We come from a big city. Bogota is like 10 million, about 10 million people.
It's a big
city. It's quite a change if you go from Bogota to the beautiful weather of Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, they're here. I see them as often as I can. My brother Sebastian is a trumpet player.
Okay.
But that's part of the story.
How'd you get started out playing music in New York?
I studied classical guitar. That's my expertise and my degree. I met few people going through a guitar festival in New York City. It was called, I believe it was called the Midtown Guitar Seminar or Festival, that it was led by Jorge Caballero, which is this amazing virtuoso guitarist from Peru. And then I used to attend the master classes at MSM, Manhattan School of Music, the guitar master classes. So I got to meet Jorge and I believe Manuel Barrueco and several other artists, and I made some friends there. Then through them I got some gigs and I started like playing classical guitar for like events and things like that. Eventually I realized that I wanted to not only play the guitar, but to write music and to learn about popular music and get more into rock music and other forms of music. At the same time, I was like looking to attend my first guitar craft course. That was in 2004 in Raft Island, Washington.
Guitar craft being the guitar school, for lack of a better term, begun by Robert Fripp in 1985.
Okay, yeah, it's not like we make guitars, but we sort of bring some new techniques and
Personal development
and a way of living, of being. And I was really interested into that, and then I attended that, and it changed my whole music making and my relationship with music.
That was what year?
2004.
2004. So when you taking it back to before you came here, what was the first kind of guitar you ever had? Not only what is your first guitar, but what's the first music you remember that made you say, hey, I want to try that out. I want to play guitar. Because usually that happens before somebody gets a guitar, unless they have a family that has guitars. But
there were the Beatles, that they were always present in my house. And I remember watching Yellow Submarine and all of those things. And I was a kid. I was like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6. And I was like really touched by it, by the songs. I didn't understand a word of it, but like...
It just looks fun.
Yeah, it just like sounded so alive and wonderful. And I fell in love with that. And then later, say that I was like between 8 and 10 years old, there was the whole boom of Spanish rock. There was this band called Soda Stereo, which I really liked. And they really made a big impact in my generation and the following generations. And I love their music, and I got their records, and I was like, I want to play music. I want to play guitar. So between, Soda
Looks more
Stereo.
fun than working in a bank. When you're a kid, you're like, I'm going to give this a try first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So mainly the Beatles, and then Soda Stereo, which of course were influenced by the Beatles and the new wave, the Police and the Cure, and
Because that was the time.
that was the time. And
Right.
also like bands like King Crimson and Pink Floyd.
Are you the oldest in your family?
I am the oldest in my family.
So am I. So how did you come across all these recordings, being the oldest in your family? Because you didn't have an older brother or...
Right. Well, my parents are pretty young. That's one of the things.
Your parents are pretty young.
They got me when they were in their early 20s. So my dad had like, I remember he had like Relayer by Yes, and he had 10 Years After and Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. And I was curious. I was like listening to those records. among also some classical music.
Well, I've met Albert. I know he's a cool dude, so I can imagine what he was like when he was in his early 20s.
I remember that he thought that Pink Floyd was a guy.
Right. Yeah. Which one of you is Pink is the joke.
Yeah,
yes.
that was funny. Electric Light Orchestra.
ELO.
Yellow, that's the guy. And I really liked them too. I was like, wow, this is great. And so I had a bunch of records when I was a kid, and I would just go and browse through them. I discovered all this music. Mm-hmm. And I was in a Catholic school when I was in my elementary school.
Right.
And I was in the choir. I was one of the main soloists in the choir. And that introduced me to a lot of like older people, and they showed me music, and I was like really into like listening to music that it was ahead of my time, being really young.
So there was a certain point where you said like you wanted to become a guitarist, you wanted to get a guitar.
I didn't know if I wanted to become a guitarist. I just felt the need to play. I didn't have any sort of instruction in the beginning. I got some money from my godfather, and so he gave me like $10 in Colombian currency at the time. Mm-hmm. And I asked my mom, let's go to the store and let's buy a guitar. I asked my godfather to give me money. He gave me the money. We went to the store and we bought this guitar that she ended up like, not like breaking in my head, but almost like just like, no more music.
What do you mean?
In the beginning, they weren't. My mom was very supportive of music. She thought it was like a, like...
Every gentleman needs to have some kind of education in the arts.
Well, she thought it was like more like a long hair, sort of like you're gonna be a hippie or like...
A bum
playing the guitar and blah, blah, blah. And she didn't support that very much.
How wrong she was.
Well, I was a punk for a while.
Yeah, that's weren't we all?
Eventually, like my dad supported me, and I had my cousins, and people were like, "Yeah, let's play." And we put together a band called Raquel, like Rachel, and then we played like new wave stuff. We played The Cure and U2, and they liked the Smiths and Susie and the Banshees and these things.
And like most guys in bands at that point, that's how you really sort of learn how things fit. They work together.
Yeah.
What arrangements are.
Yeah. Well.
Not everybody has to be loud. All these things that we learn.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if we had that sort of level of sophistication at the time.
If you do something, you're going to learn something.
Yeah. And eventually I got to meet like older kids, and they introduced me to better music. They introduced me to Voivod, I remember.
To what?
Voivod is this Canadian...
Voivod?
Prog rock metal band. Because I wasn't into Metallica at the time. I liked them later, but like I wasn't into like Metallica and things like that. I was more into like music with like a more melodic...
What year was this?
This 1988.
See, those are the years I gave up pop music because I started working here for John Cage, and I was learning all the history of New York contemporary classical. So there are pockets of stuff that I've just missed. I feel bad that I didn't know anything about Voivod. Especially the name like that, I would have remembered.
Actually, my friend Julian Silva, who you know very well, he introduced me to Voivod, and through them, they introduced me to King Crimson.
Yeah?
I was in my band, and they told me, well, I know you like Pink Floyd, and you like this and that, but like...
You should check these guys out.
Yeah. And they passed me on a beautiful vinyl. Starless and Bible Black. That was my first King Crimson record, and I was like blown away by it. I was like, wow, this thing is like, I can't really explain by words what it is. I just felt so attracted to it, and my favorite track was, of course, The Night Watch. It was the one I totally blew me away, and especially the guitar solo is one of the most beautiful, I would say, Fripp's guitar solos ever. I didn't understand the words, of course. I love the energy and the intensity of that music, and I still do today.
Well, I often say too, like when I was a young guy studying classical music, I loved a lot of the Bach cantatas because I didn't understand the words, but I liked the sound of the choir and I liked the energy. And then once I got older and started to understand German a bit more, it wasn't as mystical to me. It was limiting to know what the words actually meant. Before I knew what the words meant, they could mean anything. And I was just listening to the energy. But anyways, I understand what you're saying. You don't have to, know the words to get the energy of a piece of music. I've seen your band, the Parias Ensemble, a couple of times. Why don't you tell us about the band? It seems to be made up of people from all over.
Yeah, parias means basically pariah in the sense of outcast, not racially or anything like that, but like more like we didn't feel that we belonged. We're both classical guitar players, and we didn't feel that we belonged to that world of playing. But we didn't fit into the jazz or the rock or any other place that it was happening in the late 2000s and say 2006, 2007. So we're like, okay, we know all these people. We know all these Latin American people from Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, Cuba. We know them all, but like we kind of like don't belong there. So like we're like pariahs. And we're like, why don't we call ourselves Parias? And that was the beginning of Parias. And we began as a duet, playing our music, our original music on guitars, classical guitars, acoustic guitars.
Who's we? You and?
Reyes Llinas,
okay,
my friend. And then we ended up calling some other friends, a clarinet player, an accordion player we had at the time, and a percussionist. Then we called another friend to play the bass, and we had a band. And in that process, I was working with a cellist, and we include the cello too. And then I was writing my first album called Molino, and they were the band that backed me up for Molino. So it was kind of like Parias playing my music. Why not Parias playing Parias music? Practical reasons. I was paying for it, and I was writing the music. It became Daniel Reyes Llinas Molino, not Parias album.
Right.
Eventually, we turned into an ensemble that is interested in playing contemporary music of different composers, including ourselves. But I kind of like found a way to be a soloist with a band and have a branch of the band where it's dedicated to play people's music and new music and kind of like blur that idea of like improvised and written music.
Gotcha. I understand that too. When I first moved here, I was, had training in classical and training in pop music because I was in bands, and it seemed the thing to do was to be like a serious classical musician who was willing to incorporate elements of rock and jazz and hip hop into their serious work. That was sort of hard to keep up with, but I realized that now I've gotten to a point where I'm having a lot more fun being a pop musician that uses element of serious music in my compositions because the audiences are bigger. It's just a lot more fun, and the people are happier.
Yeah, it's just a different expression. I still love playing classical music, and it gives me a different inner sensation, and in a way, like the repertoire of Guitarcraft or the music that we practice together, it has a lot of like classical feel to it in terms of like you gotta be present, you are playing an acoustic instrument, you're not being amplified and in front of like 250,000 people. You gotta be very attentive to detail and play with acoustics.
Yeah, and there's nothing really associated with like a lot of other popular music with fashion,
right?
Or what I would call extra musical concerns. It's all about the music, like classical music is. It should be.
And it's very precise. It's not easy to play.
Well, I think that people who are familiar with Guitarcraft will be interested in this section of our show, which we like to call unnecessary talking. I just want to know if there's anything that you find particularly interesting these days that's completely off topic. What's been interesting to you that has nothing to do about music that caught your attention or something you have noticed?
Food. Yeah.
What about food?
I've been into cooking lately. I was into like buying like pre-cooked food for a while, and then I found myself with a lot of time in my hands for a period of time, and I was like, okay, between practice, I'm just gonna cook my meal, and I'm gonna enjoy that process, and that also has to do with Guitarcraft sort of ideas. I had the time to cook my meals, and then I got experimental about it, and recently I've been dating this amazing, beautiful woman, and she has all this like cookware. So like a lot of our time together is about finding recipes, finding the right ingredients, and cooking.
That's
And
not a
listening
bad
to
thing.
like I don't know the Eagles, for example. I got into the Eagles now.
The band, the Eagles?
Yeah, not so much like the countryside, but like more like the 70s
Yeah. I've always been
soul thing that I found fascinating.
Joe Walsh fan myself.
Cooking has been a great therapy for my life. Also, you get to eat better food.
Eat
and
better.
In a way, it's like, yeah, you spend some time doing it and cooking, but you save money, you have leftovers.
The last week, I was really just dying for Indian food. I just wanted to make a good chicken curry with vegetables and a nice rice,
Nice.
delicately spiced, just perfect. And so I realized that in this neighborhood, we have in Gramercy we have what we call Curry Hill, not Murray Hill, but Curry
Right.
Hill, because all the Indian restaurants are there. Instead of spending like $40, on dinner for two and have them deliver it, I spent less than half of that at the grocery store downstairs and made a fantastic curry to my specifications with a little bit of nutmeg thrown in along with the curry. I gave away the secret. Anyways, it's interesting that I know a lot of my friends who are musicians eventually end up being very good cooks too, because there's a lot of parallels when you think about, the mix, the ingredients, balancing out
The dynamics.
The dynamics, yes, absolutely.
You tried the rhubarb pie we made.
Yes, that's right. We had one of the nice things about Pepper Green Media is that we do our work here right on the East River. We have the 4th of July here every year. So we had an event last summer, and Danielle came over with this beloved and made a fantastic rhubarb pie that was the perfect close.
Yeah, that was great. I shouldn't take the credit for it. She made it.
Too late. What's a recipe you're dying to try that you haven't tried yet?
Oh. Well, I wanted to do, and I did it in the past for my friends. I wanted to like offer them a Colombian meal. Colombian food is not very sophisticated, but it's very rich. And in my region, in the capital, close to the capital, we have a dish called ajiaco, which is a soup. It's a 3-potato soup with corn, and you garnish it with heavy cream and chicken, and like, seasoned chicken.
Right.
And shredded. I always promise my friends.
Oh, like you throw on like croutons, but you throw on shredded chicken.
Yeah, and it's quite delicious, quite unique. And I tried it in Colombian restaurants in New York, and it's not even close to what I could actually make.
Exactly.
So I want to do that for you, for my friends.
We're there.
Well, you should.
Well, this is also that reminds me too. This is the time of year, probably a little bit too late, but now with this kind of where I grew up, morel mushrooms come in the last week of April, first couple of weeks of May, maybe a little bit later this year because we've been having a delayed spring. These mushrooms look like they're from the planet Mars. They don't look like mushrooms. They're the weirdest, shape. They look like they belong on a Yes album cover.
Okay.
If that makes trying to tie everything together here. But I'd make morel mushrooms au gratin. Chop shallots in butter, and then you throw in the chopped mushrooms, saute them, and then you throw in the cream and brandy and boil that down, a little bit of kosher salt. And then once that thickens up and becomes, a nice sauce, then you put that in a baking dish. Then you grate your aged Parmesan cheese over the top and then put that underneath a broiler so it becomes all that bubbly thing. And then you just serve it on toast with a salad on the side. And it's a really wonderful spring brunch.
So I do the soup, you do the mushrooms.
You got it, man. When do you know that it's time to change strings?
Well, they just go mute. They just don't ring anymore. I'm a sweaty guitarist too. I sweat a lot. So usually, if I have a performance, after the performance, I have to change the strings before and after the performance. In the times that I'm practicing, I notice because it loses intonation, it loses sound and brightness, and everything sounds worse. So I just come back to sound the best I can.
For me, it depends on my guitar. I've been doing a lot of recording with my Les Paul this week, and it being a heavier guitar than my single coil Fenders, it seems that once the strings sort of have been on for a couple days and a couple sessions, like a pair of old blue jeans, they just like sit in the right place for a long time before before anything really builds up, no matter how much I play. And I wouldn't mind it if I'll wipe the strings down, but I wouldn't mind it staying perfectly in tune. Like it just wants to be in tune now because the strings are just so used to each other. Maybe not forever, but we do hit the sweet spot where it's like, okay.
Yeah, well, I remember that in Colombia, like back in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, we didn't have like open market with the international world. Instruments and guitar strings and all of these things were really, really expensive. So like we will take them off, we will take the strings off and we will boil them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we will boil them and like clean them up with
being careful not to put any bends in them.
Right, yeah. Like we will boil them and then we will dry them and we'll put them back together.
Because they are stainless steel, so they're not going to rust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will save a lot of money because strings were a luxury now.
Yeah, and
back in the day.
And depending where you lived and the kind you wanted, they could also be imports too, which would mean they're not around as frequently as living in a big city like here.
Yeah, well, they were imports, totally imports.
Yeah.
Like the Adario. I for my classical guitar I use Pro Arte strings, and then somebody brought me from Sweden. My dad brought me the composites kind, which is like the high end classical ones that it comes with a wounded third string. Those were really expensive in Colombia. They were like super expensive. So like he bought me a pair and I was like, wow, these are like the best strings, whatever. So I got stuck with them. When I moved to New York, I only got those composites.
Sounding good. I don't know if I can do that with this Dan Electro.
Yeah, of course.
How are we doing here in the string department? I'm just about there.
I'm actually done. A reliable A, perhaps, and then I'm good.
I'll give you a reliable A. It should be reliable for a second or two.
I used to I give them a little stretch before I actually set them into like...
Oh, I do too.
On the 12th fret, I stretch them, a little massage. And that helps. It's in the classical guitar world, like it's common, is to give a massage to the string.
I actually just doing it now, I heard a couple clicking sounds coming from the machine heads as it did the final bend. So I imagine, yes, everything's a little bit flat now.
So the massage works.
Well, that's one massage that had a happy ending. Everything's nice and tuned. I feel in tune. Tell us, what musical projects are you up to currently?
Well, I'm finishing my second record. It's called En Remolinos.
En Remolinos.
En Remolinos. It comes from a wordplay from Molino, my first record. So this is a little bit more twisted and better produced, and it has amazing performances.
Molino, does that also mean like a mill?
It's a mill. It's
like a windmill, like a mill.
Yeah. So En Remolinos, it will mean whirlwind, and it has that content of like revolutions. And it was my inner revolution in a way, not in a spiritual sense, and I have amazing performances by Vasco Dukovsky on clarinets, and which is part of Parias Ensemble, John O'Brien, Alex David, Megan O'Burke, and some other amazing artists from New York City and all over the world. So I'm very excited to share that with you very soon.
Okay, looks like we're just about ready to roll. So what are we going to play today?
We're going to play Vitaminka. It's a piece from my next record.
Vitaminka.
Yes, it's vitamin in Polish, I think. It's a piece in that deals mainly with 3/2 and the diminished scale. That's the materials of this piece.
What kind of scale?
Diminished. And I wrote it a couple of years ago, maybe actually longer. And this version for 2 guitars. The version that is featured in my album has clarinets, bass clarinet, acoustic bass, cello, electric guitars, and I think it's tapan.
It's a drum, right?
It's a drum.
Okay. We got the music here. So, hope my sight reading is what it used to be.
I hope mine is too.
Yeah. Okay. Vitaminka.
Vitaminka.
Can you give us a count in?
Yeah.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's very cool.
Was fun playing it with you.
Nice work. I've always been a huge fan of anything that's 3 against 2. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners know about what that rhythm means. But anyways, you can see it either as 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2. And such is life, as I think to see it. But anybody wants to find out more about you, Daniel Reyes Llinas, and your musical activities, where can they go?
They can check out www.llinasmusic.com, ginasmusic.com, or SoundCloud, or on Facebook at ginasmusic.com.
Excellent. Thanks again, man, for being on the show, and I know I'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. Our guest has been Daniel Reyes Llinas, and you can find out more about him on our website at stringsandthingsshow.com. The music in this show is from Daniel's album Molino, which you can find at his site, ginasmusic.com. That's LLINAS music.com. Special thanks to Vox Amps USA, D'Addario Strings and Electro Harmonics, New York City. I'm Jocelyn Gonzalez on the Zeros and Ones, and Patrick Grant is our host and axe wrangler. Strings and Things is a Pepper Green production for Headstepper Media. See you next time.